No. I can't imagine even being called that. No, I believe in the sanctity of the vote. The Democrats didn't because they cheated like dogs, but I believe in the sanctity, and this was too big to rig. This last election was just too big to rig.
Mr. President,
But
when
no,
do you plan to
really
speak
the
to-
opposite.
When do you plan to speak to President Putin?
Could be very soon.
And you talked a bit about Ukraine and Russia, but how long do you think it would take to end that conflict? And
I have to speak to President Putin. We're going to have to find out. He can't be thrilled. He's not doing so well. I mean, he's grinding it out, but most people thought that war would have been over in about 1 week. And now you're into 3 years, right? So he can't be thrilled. It's not making him look very good. Now, eventually, you know, I mean, it's a big machine, so things will happen, but I think he'd be very well off to end that war. We have numbers that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed. About 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are killed. Russia's bigger, they have more soldiers to lose. But that's no way to run a country.
What did your TikTok order do, Mr. President?
It just gave me the right to sell it or close it. Essentially with TikTok, I have the right to either sell it or close it. And we'll make that determination. And we may have to get an approval from China too, I'm not sure. But I'm sure they'll approve it. And if they don't approve it, it would be somewhat of a hostile act, I think. But it's good for China if it gets approved.
Mr. President, so you're not guaranteeing that TikTok will be around after 90 days from today?
No, but it could very well be. It makes sense for it to be, because it's got tremendous value. But if we create the value by approving, you know, in other words, that approval gives it tremendous value. If that's the case, then we should be entitled to 50% as a country. You understand? You haven't heard that one before, right? That's called a joint venture. And nobody ever thought that way
Maybe your
before.
partner.
Well, I don't know. I think you have a lot of people that would be interested in TikTok with the United States as a partner.
Mr. President, what was it like walking into the Oval Office this evening?
Oh, what a great feeling. One of the better feelings I've ever had.
Do you like this town better now than in 2017?
Well, we're very experienced now. You would say nobody's ever had experience like I have. I've dealt with some very good people. I've dealt with some very bad people, and I know who the bad ones are and the good ones are. You know, don't forget, I was very successful in primarily the real estate business. And people used to say, who's worse, a politician or a vicious real estate developer? And I'd always say, you know, the real estate developer is far worse. But after about 3 months and getting to know scum like Adam Schiff and other people like that, I said, no, actually, real estate people are quite nice by comparison.
You said you plan to speak with President Putin soon. What about President Zelensky, and what's your message?
Yeah, I would, but he's told me he wants to make a deal. I mean, Zelensky wants to make a deal. I don't know if Putin does, he might not, I don't know. He should make a deal. I think he's destroying Russia by not making a deal. I think Russia's going to be in big trouble. You take a look at their economy, you take a look at the inflation in Russia. So I would hope, I got along with him great, and, you know, I would hope he wants to make a deal.
Mr. President, are you keeping U.S. sanctions on Russia until he makes a deal?
Well, sanctions or tariffs. I think the word tariff is much better because it keeps your dollar stronger. I think tariffs are more effective. I mean, I used sanctions on Iran. Iran was broke. When I left office, Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, none. They were flat broke. And October 7th would have never happened. And I think you all know that. It would have never happened. They had no money. Now they're rich, but you know, they're weakened in a different way. I would say that the one attack by Israel really set them back. It really set them back. The Pagers and others. You know, the attack on air defense was a bad attack for Iran.
What are you signing now, sir?
It's an executive order relating to reforms to the federal workforce, including to the senior executive service.
We're getting rid of all of the cancer I call it cancer, the cancer caused by the Biden administration.
How confident are you, Mr. President, that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the 3 phases of this deal?
I'm not confident. That's not our war, it's their war, but
Apologize.
I'm not confident, but I think they're very weakened on the other side.
Do you support the 2-state?
Gaza, boy, I looked at a picture of Gaza. Gaza is like a massive demolition site. That place it's really got to be rebuilt in a different way.
Do you plan to help rebuilding Gaza?
I might. You know, Gaza's interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather. You know, everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it, but it's very interesting. But some fantastic things could be done with Gaza.
How do you see the future in governance for Gaza?
Well, it depends. I can't imagine you could have, well, you certainly can't have the people that were there. Most of them are dead, by the way, right? Most of them are dead. But they didn't exactly run it well. Run viciously and badly. So you can't have that.
Mr. President, on TikTok, sir, do you pause any decision on Chinese tariffs until you know what the resolution on TikTok will be? Are those things
No,
connected
if
at all?
China didn't approve it, we could put tariffs on China. Don't forget, China charges us tariffs, and we charge them very little, except for what I did. I put a lot of, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars. But until I came along, China never paid 10 cents to this country. They ripped us off, and they never paid anything. But like, if we wanted to make a deal with TikTok, and it was a good deal, and China wouldn't approve it, then I think ultimately they'd approve it, because we'd put tariffs on China. Maybe. I'm not saying I would, but you certainly could do that. And if we said, well, if you're not going to approve it, then that's a certain hostility, and we'll put tariffs of 25, 30, 40, 50%, even 100%. And if we did that, I think they'd approve it.
President Trump, you've seen the other living presidents a couple times in the last few months. If you ever had to call on one of them for advice about anything that's going on here, which one would you call?
It's an interesting. Well, I thought Bill Clinton was a very good politician. I don't think he was used properly. I think they disrespected him. When Hillary was running, he came back and he said, you know, you better get up to Michigan and Wisconsin. You remember that, Peter? Every house has a Trump sign on it. And they all laughed at him because the Republicans had won Michigan and Wisconsin for decades, long time. And they all laughed at Bill Clinton. Like, the hell does he know? And he turned out to be right, because I won both of them. And then we just won both in this election, too. We won Wisconsin and Michigan and every other swing state. We won all the swing states, all 7. They talked about 7 swing states. We won them all. So, but Bill Clinton he had a great political sense, I think.
You looked like you were having a good conversation with President Obama at President
I
Carter's
was.
funeral.
And you'd like to know what it was? Oh,
Everybody.
everybody wants to know. I know, I wouldn't want to, but we were having some crazy conversation. Why do you asking a question like that? I don't think you want to know. You might
Tell
not.
us when you decide.
You might be insulted.
It's an executive order relating to holding former government officials accountable for unlawful disclosure of sensitive information. This next one, sir, is a declaration of a national energy emergency.
So you also.
That's a big one. You know what that allows you to do? That means you can do whatever you have to do to get out of that problem. And we do have that kind of an emergency.
President Trump, at some point will you use your powers of the presidency to tell Americans who are concerned about drones?
Yeah,
A
oh,
few weeks
good,
ago,
yeah.
what exactly
I will.
happened? Can you tell us now?
In fact, I'd like to know, because I just got here.
What do you think?
I just came here. I've been here for, what, 15 minutes now.
Do people listening, because this is going out
And
live,
I got to read this letter, too. Because of you, I found this letter.
I can read it for you.
It's interesting. Yeah, I knew you would. Your father would, too.
But is it anything, these drones, is it anything that people need to be worried about?
No, I think it's terrible. I would like to find out what it is and tell the people.
And can you commit to some kind of...
In fact, I'd like to do that. Could we find out what that was, Susie? Okay? Yeah, why don't we find out immediately? I mean, I can't imagine it's an enemy, or there would have been, people would have gotten blown up all over. Maybe they were testing things. I don't know why they wouldn't have said what it was. They had a lot of them flying over Bedminster, which is interesting, right?
And with the events today and yesterday, was everything moved inside just for cold weather, or was there some kind of security concern?
No security, because they had everything shut down to drones. You can shut that down pretty easily if you're sophisticated. They're very sophisticated, these people. No, it was just cold weather, and we made a good move because, first of all, I thought it was incredible in the Capitol today. You know why I liked it? Because I got great reviews on that speech. I got great reviews. Can you believe it? They actually were fair.
This is
Maybe the fake news is changing.
unleashing energy
Yeah,
production.
unleashing energy production. But I thought it was, I think having it in the Capitol is great. It's obviously, you can take care of the people you have to take care of. The city was booming, and if we would have done it outside, people would have been hurt because it was really cold. It was like, looked sunny, but when you stood outside for 10 minutes, people were running back in. It was really cold and really windy. The wind brings it down a lot. So we made the right decision. You couldn't have stayed, I don't think you could have had it out. You know how cold it was today. It was, people went out for a little while just to test it. They couldn't stay out more than 10 minutes. They all came back in. So we would have had a disaster if we did that, and people would have been hurt.
President, the unlawful disclosure, Leo, is that related to the Hunter Biden situation?
Which one?
The one on unlawful disclosures by federal officials, is that related to?
No, I think it's just more general than that. It's not Hunter Biden. I was surprised that President Biden would go and pardon his whole family, because that makes him look very guilty. I could have pardoned my family. I could have pardoned myself, my family. I said, if I do that, it's going to make me look very guilty. I don't think I'd be sitting here, frankly. If I did that, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now, because I would have shown that you're guilty. But by pardoning his brother or brothers, by pardoning all of those people that he pardoned, by pardoning J6, the Unselect Committee, they destroyed all of the documents. They deleted all of the information. There's no information. And a lot of the information pertains to Nancy Pelosi because she was given 100, I mean, you know this, it's on tape with her daughter. Nancy Pelosi was responsible for not taking advantage of 10,000 soldiers or 1,000. You wouldn't have you could have used 400. It was a relatively small crowd. It wasn't the crowd that was at the mall. It was a small crowd. So I was a little bit surprised that he did it, because it makes him look guilty. I mean, he's going to have to live with it. Now, with that being said, it's unbelievable precedent it creates for a president. But the precedent is unbelievable. Now maybe every president that leaves office, they're going to pardon every person they ever met, so they don't have some lunatic like deranged Jack Smith, who's a total lunatic, by the way. Not a smart guy either, he's a dummy. But we beat the hell out of him, and I helped my reputation.
Do you think you'd have to do the same thing at the end of this term?
Well, I guess now I have precedent to do it. I wouldn't want to do that, no. I think it makes you look very guilty. I think it makes Biden look very bad, very weak, and very guilty. And, I mean, he pardoned everybody. How about this J6 committee? Why is he pardoning them? The reason is because if you delete and destroy documentation, everything, they have nothing, because they were guilty as hell. They rigged it. It was a rigged deal. And when you do that, they look very bad, but I was a little surprised he did it. Liz Cheney, I mean, she's a lunatic. And she lost by the greatest margin in the history of a politician running for Congress, like 40 points. The reason it was the greatest is because anybody losing that badly is going to drop out. But she's a nut job. She doesn't drop out. She just keeps chugging forward. and she lost by almost 40 points. That's the biggest number anybody's ever lost by. But why would Biden do that? He pardoned her and pardoned everybody. The reason is that they destroyed documents. And if you're even in a civil case, which this wouldn't be, I mean, people go to jail for a long time for doing that. What's this one?
That's unleashing American energy, sir. It relates to easing permitting processes and other regulatory systems to ensure that we can produce energy efficiently to drive the American economy forward.
President Trump, looking around the office, we noticed some changes from the way that Biden had it set up. Can you confirm that you have added back the Diet Coke play?
I think this, first of all, I just got here. So my people came in. They have extraordinary decorator sense, right? Let me just see some of the pictures. That's a good one. I could live with him. I could live with George Washington, I can tell you. I could live with Thomas Jefferson. I could live with most of them. They took a very safe route. They don't have any bad ones up there.
Withdrawing from
What is this one?
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sir.
Ooh, that's a big one. So we paid $500 million to World Health when I was here, and I terminated it. China with 1.4 billion people. We have 350. We have, nobody knows what we have because so many people came in illegally, but let's say we have 325. They had 1.4 billion. They were paying 39 million, we were paying 500 million. It seemed a little unfair to me. So that wasn't the reason, but I dropped out. They offered me to come back for 39 million. In theory, it should be less than that, but, you know. And when Biden came back, they came back for 500 million. He knew that you could have come back for 39 million. They wanted us back so badly, so we'll see what happens.
Mr. President,
Pretty sad though, think of it. China pays 39 million and we pay 500 million. And China's a bigger country.
Mr. President, you spoke about inflation today in your remarks. What actions are you taking today that will have a direct impact for Americans on their everyday costs to bring the
Well,
costs down?
the biggest thing and factor for inflation is energy. They screwed up my energy policy. And then they went back to it. You know, they heard it really badly, and then they went back to it, and they started drilling more, but by that time it was too late. Many of these things that we're signing and that Doug Burgum is going to be signing, and Chris Wright, who's phenomenal, you know, Energy, Department of Energy, we're going to be taking a lot, we're going to make a lot of money from energy. We have more than anybody else. We're going to make a lot of money from energy. We're going to make a lot of money from tariffs. You know, European Union charges us, they have a VAT tax of 20%, but it's really much higher than that. And that's the equivalent, almost the equivalent of a tariff. And they're tough. They're very tough. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm product. They don't take almost anything. And yet we take their cars, and we take their farm product. We take a lot from them. So, you know, we have like a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. So we'll straighten that out with either tariffs or they have to buy our oil. The one thing they can do, our oil and gas, the one thing they can do to catch up quickly, buy our oil and gas.
Will you travel?
And they should do that.
Will you travel to China this year?
Yeah, it could be. I've had the invite.
Mr.
President, she
President,
invited
I would
you
do it,
to
yeah.
come this
I
year.
would do it.
talking about the European Union and the tariffs, like, what do you mean when you say that European Union conflict is part of BRICS?
That a what?
BRICS. Is it
Oh, BRICS. No, I was talking about BRICS. BRICS is 6 nations. I think it's 7 nations. And they were looking to do a number in the United States. And if they do that, they won't be happy about what's going to happen to them.
Are you still considering a universal tariff, Mr. President, on all countries?
I may, yeah, but we're not ready for that yet. We may put it, wrap it,
Mr. President.
because essentially all countries take advantage of the U.S. We don't make any good deals in the U.S. It's amazing in a way that we exist. We don't make good deals. We don't have any good deals. We have a deficit with almost, not all, there are a couple, I won't tell you their names because I don't want them to find out about it because they'll feel stupid. But there are a couple of countries that there are a couple of countries that actually don't make money with us, but I don't want to let you know because they'll immediately change that. But we're gonna do, I tell you what, our country has an amazing economic future. Everybody believe that?
What kind of universal tariff if you did do one?
Well, you'd put a universal tariff on anybody doing business in the United States because they're coming in and they're stealing our wealth, they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our companies, they're hurting our companies. So you put a tariff on to keep them from doing that.
Mr. President, you surround yourself with a whole bunch of billionaires today. President Biden, in his farewell address, warned about an oligarchy. I was wondering if you could respond to that.
Well, he had a lot of guys, and then they found out that he didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and I think they deserted him. They deserted him, those same guys. Look, I don't make pretense of smart guys, but there are a lot of smart people around, but they did desert him. They were all with him, every one of them. Now they're all with me, I don't know. It's not going to get anything from me, I don't need money. But I do want the nation to do well, and they're smart people, and they have, they create a lot of jobs. And if they don't do it, China's going to do it. What they've done is they've taken industries and they've taken it away. They outsmarted China. And, we sort of like that. It's okay. They've done a great job. A lot of them. Not all of them.
Protecting women from radical gender ideologies.
Ooh.
Mr. President, going back to the World Health Organization, you were the president during COVID. Don't you see the importance of an organization like that to coordinate a global response?
Sure, I do, but not when you're being ripped off like we are by the World Health. World Health ripped us off. Everybody rips off the United States, and that's it. It's not going to happen anymore. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, Phil.
One last one, sir. This is your Martin Luther King Day proclamation.
Thank you, President. Thank you, sir. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, that is President Donald Trump wrapping up his first conference press conference, that is, after being inaugurated into the White House and taking office. And two big themes that really stood out there, his position on energy and his position on TikTok. Also, he may be looking at enacting a universal tariff, which has been, I think, out of all the stuff that we've read and kind of understood, it seems like something new that he might be looking at as a bargaining tool, as a bargaining chip, and a standard policy of negotiation with countries where the U.S. runs a deficit, a trade deficit, that is. So he covered a lot. Cedric, what did you take away from it? Because obviously, for me, the TikTok deal and what he has in terms of resolving that issue, what he has in his mind in terms of resolving that issue was a big one. I may do TikTok, I may not. If I do the TikTok deal, we should get half, which is what he's aiming for, 50%. He's also said that he's going to link the TikTok deal with tariffs. So if China doesn't agree, then tariffs are coming their way.
Absolutely. So a few things that we can take from his press conference essentially is that it's America first, it's going to be muscular, and it's on America's terms. Yeah. The second thing is around energy. U.S. is the largest producer of energy, has huge reserves, and they know that energy independence and energy production is going to help to propel the U.S. economy, especially in a digital age where you have huge demand for power, AI chips, supercomputing, etc. And so Trump doesn't want to be left behind. And the third thing, as you said, tariffs. But the way he talked about it, he basically said, I'm open to negotiation. Depends on what's going to happen. That'll determine how hard I tariff you. So it could be trade policy, it could be immigration policy, it could be TikTok policy. All of these things are open for negotiation. And I think Trump is just creating that uncertainty as a maximalist position to extract the most advantage for the U.S.
Absolutely. And we'll come back to that story in just a moment. I do want to say that we are seeing much movement in the energy market on the back of President Trump signing the executive order of unleashing more energy production and signing the National Energy Corporation, which is essentially extending his drill baby drill policy that he promised during his campaign. But it's 9:31. Hong Kong and Greater China markets have opened. Hang Seng heavyweights, I want to mark them as well. We are looking at a slightly positive open for the major markets. You're looking at the heavyweights also doing quite well for themselves. It must be said, I want to bring up the yuan. In the offshore market, the yuan has strengthened to its highest level since November 8th, 24. So about in 3 months, more than 3 months, 3.5 months or so, this has been the strongest point that we have seen in 2.5 months, 3 months roughly. This has been the strongest point that we have seen for the offshore yuan rate, and that has to do with the pullback that we have seen in the greenback in the overnight session. We are still waiting for any sign of promised tariffs on China under the Trump administration. The mainland market, let's bring that up for our viewers as well. Hong Kong is doing okay. It's gotten out of the gate on a positive note, so things are looking okay for that market. But this is where you are seeing the mainland markets open. Shenzhen Composite have about 0.3%, and the China Next is up 0.5%. So broadly, sentiment is positive as far as Greater China markets are concerned, and we've already touched upon the currency situation, which has reversed course after a while. After seeing some fairly painful weakness over the course of the last few weeks, a reversal has been in the works for the spot rate, offshore rate, and the one-year NDF. Ben Harburg is founder and portfolio manager at Core Values Alpha, and he was at the inauguration today in person. Our guest host, Cedric Shihab, is still with us. Ben, very good to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your time. There was so much packed in. It almost seemed like an agenda-setting press conference where he made sure his initial thoughts were communicated on what he plans to do in his first 100 days or even more in office. So how are you really looking at what came out today? Because as Cedric and I were just discussing, energy seems to be a big piece, TikTok and China seems to be a big piece, and this universal tariff regime obviously is going to be a cornerstone of his policy.
There's a huge amount of optimism on the ground here in Washington, and actually it feels like very little dissent. It really feels like an America and business first policy that threw out all of the traditional bureaucracies and edicts and protocols and really just focuses on the core issues, driving the American economy, securing America's borders, making Americans feel safe, utilizing the resources that this country has, and doing away with a lot of the red tape that has stopped America from continuing its leadership across a lot of its key business verticals. So you will feel a huge amount of optimism across Washington today as people saw Trump taking a lot of policies that he had foreshadowed or forecasted already about driving down inflation and utilizing those resources to maintain American business leadership.
Ben, what held him back today in talking about tariffs on China? Because he did talk about indicative tariffs that he's considering on Mexico as well as Canada. We've already seen the currencies react there, and he's going to look, he will be thinking about imposing those tariffs from 1st Feb onwards. But nothing on China except for the fact that he's waiting for the TikTok deal to happen. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, if China doesn't give him the deal, 50% of the business, then he's going to come back with tariffs on China. So more of a bargaining chip more than anything else.
I'd separate the two. So first, China wasn't one of the reasons upon which he was elected, right? Trump was elected on securing the border, on driving down inflation, on key domestic issues. China wasn't on the top of the tongue of voters across America. TikTok is obviously a very hot issue, but I would separate the two. So TikTok, he now has himself in a no-lose situation. He's regained the trust and the following of the TikTok generation. They see him as a savior, and the ball now is very much in the court of TikTok to come to a transaction that is within America's best interest, both from a data privacy and security perspective as well as an ownership perspective. And so I think he's positioned himself well there. Tariffs, they're just going to take a little bit of time on. I think we're waiting to have our new Treasury Secretary and our new Commerce Secretaries come in and have their nominations approved by the Senate. Once they're on board, I think there will be a bit more time taken. And of course, from Trump's viewpoint, and I think correctly so, tariffs are seen as a negotiating tactic to get better trade deals for America. And so within that context, they're nuanced and they just need to take a little bit of time to be rolled out. They're not something that needs to be flushed out day one because they weren't at the top of the domestic policy agenda.
Thanks for that. So I thought one of his comments on the U.S. dollar was quite interesting. He said he wants a strong dollar. Do you think that he meant that as actually want a strong dollar against all the other currencies? Because, of course, that would be more difficult for him to reduce those trade deficits that the U.S. runs? Or do you think he means, I want a strong dollar from an institutional perspective, whereby the global economy remains centered around the strong dollar? Because I think a lot of viewers are sometimes confusing both.
I think it's the latter. So I think obviously we want to maintain the primacy of the dollar as the key global currency. And obviously it's been worrisome to those in Washington, particularly those of us working with Trump, that that trades are now being done on an RMB basis, say between the UAE and or Saudi Arabia and China. We want to maintain dollar supremacy. So I think really that is the key here. And in fact, I think you'll see very rapid action out of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and others to attack the currency manipulators, to attack those in China that have artificially kept their currencies low and therefore created significant trade imbalances, harmed America's export opportunities. And so I think to the contrary, we'll be going after those that are those bad actors that are holding currencies artificially low at America's expense.
What does that mean for the yuan, Ben?
My expectation is that it should be going down, and I think that will be part of the deal. So obviously, a robust deal that's starting to kind of see its outlines with China would include rectifying trade imbalances, going after China for some of obviously IP theft, some of these recent cyber incursions, trade imbalances. But overall, the intent here, by one way or another, either by buying Chinese bonds, by selling yuan, whatever levers are necessary, I would expect the yuan to ultimately weaken or to strengthen vis-a-vis the dollar, and hopefully therefore reduce the outflow of Chinese exports.
The energy piece has been a big one, and if you can just bring up the benchmarks there, Ben, and I know that you're in a rush, you've got to go to the ball, but just a few moments, because you're right there in the thick of all the action, so wanted to get your reaction. We are looking at NYMEX crude, light crude, going at 76.74. It's dropped about 1.5%. It's flattish for Brent crude, and obviously some very strong remarks. Trump saying that he's of course looking, the White House issuing a statement that Trump will be repealing Biden's 23 memo, barring oil drilling in some 16 million acres in the Arctic. And then he's obviously talking about stopping to buy oil from Venezuela. He's declared a national energy emergency, which means clearing more oil and gas and power projects and unleashing energy production. Do you think that this could just disrupt energy markets in a way we don't understand or quite have wrapped our heads around as of now?
It should, and we hope it does. So it's really two objectives. One, drive down the cost of energy, both for our citizens at the pump, and of course, more importantly, for driving down the cost of U.S. manufacturing. Trump mentioned that today in his speech, that the key here is to make America a more cost-competitive manufacturer. And then the second objective is obviously to improve American energy independence, to no longer be beholden to dictatorial regimes or other energy exporters that kind of held us ransom. We have huge natural resources here within the United States, not just energy, of course, but across rare earth materials and other critical minerals that are currently being processed in competitive nations like China. By doing that processing and extraction here at home and improving the regulatory regime around those to enable us to get rid of some of the regulatory environmental red tape that stopped us from extracting and processing our own both energy and minerals. Hopefully we'll see America achieving a lot more supply chain independence that will strengthen U.S. national security and negotiating leverage relative to these regimes. Okay,
Brent is turned into the red as well, fractionally so, barely so, but even so, just want to mark that turn of events for Brent crude. Ben, what does that mean for where oil prices are headed? You said lower, but how lower from here?
It'd be hard to put a number to it, but again, I mean, the objective and one of the things that has been the most painful for our constituents is when they go to fill up their trucks in middle America and the prices have continued to soar for gasoline. And we have the ability to drive that down by, as President Trump mentioned today, refilling our strategic reserve by extracting more out of our existing natural resources. So I would expect it to be a secular trend and seeing a decline in oil prices, and that would, of course, undermine some of the forward trajectory of countries like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Russia, other oil exporters that have really had a lot more leverage over us over the last 4 years. And so I would be a oil bear today.
You will be an oil bear today. All right. Wonder how OPEC Plus will be processing these statements at this juncture. Ben, lovely to have you on the show. We let you go to the ball. Have a lovely evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Cedric Shihab, of course, stays on with us as we take that break and come back in 2 short minutes. No, actually, we won't take that break. We will look at the Asian markets right now. A reminder that Asian markets are volatile today. They started positive, but now, actually, they started pretty mixed. So now you have seen a turn of events. And like I said at the top of 9, that markets here in Asia are taking a leaf from U.S. futures, which have also turned negative. And so you're seeing almost a mood of caution across the region. So the Nikkei 225 is fractionally lower. Kospi, Straits Times, the Kiwi market, all of those markets are down. The Kosdaq particularly losing close to 1% as a ranked underperformer among the pack. Let's keep our eyes on Japan. Lin joins us with a breakdown of the market action there. Lin, hi.
Yeah, hey Tanvi. So we've seen a bit of whipsaw in the markets in terms of Japanese assets and really moving with the Donald Trump rhetoric. We started off with kind of this relief, 0.8% higher because there was sort of no immediate tariffs announced during his inauguration speech. We also saw that the yen strengthened off the back of a weaker dollar. That then changed around as we've been hearing. He started to talk about tariffs, although as Cedric and others have been noting, it sounds like he's really using tariffs as a bargaining chip. The fact that he mentioned again that 25% in terms of Canada and Mexico has sent, and noticed this as he was talking, the auto stocks, which were actually the best performer this morning because of the concerns around tariffs, they are now mostly lower in the session. And of course, this is because we know that a lot of these names have significant production in both of these countries, but particularly in Mexico as well. The other sector worth mentioning, of course, is the energy side of things. And we are seeing that out of Japan, the worst performers today are in the oil and gas space. The fact that he has signed this executive order to really ramp up production domestically there, and that could, of course, then cause some sort of margin compression. That would be the concern for some of these Japanese oil and gas makers as well.
Got it. Thanks very much for that, Lynn. Kospi, we are looking at Korea's Kospi also reversing gear. Sherry Kang is watching some sensitive sectors in the region, and the Kosdaq is down nearly 1%, Sherry.
Yeah, so the volatility is definitely back, and we did see that knee-jerk reaction because at the market open, the market was really finding comfort with the Trump's tariff caution, but that was not the case. So we've got the Kospi actually was rallying about 1% and now in negative territory, giving up a 0.3%, but still finding some support right above that 2,500 level. The Korean won also pulling back a little bit, but looking at yields though, we've got the yields actually lower right across the board, but if you take a look at the super long end of the curve, we've got yields coming back a little bit, picking up a little bit. So the market is finding some calm at the moment. If you look at the sector breakdown, quite fascinating because right after he was elected, we did talk about the Trump trades, and they are very much alive. Take a look at sectors like defense and shipbuilders. They did trim some of the gains, but they are leading the gains on the Kospi here. And we've got the defense sector actually pushing higher by close to 2.5% along with the shipbuilders as we speak. And of course, it's really the idea of around Trump's relationship with some of the NATO member countries and his calls for calls on NATO countries to increase their defense spending. And of course, South Korea's defense manufacturers could be beneficiaries of that. And South Korea's shipbuilders definitely in focus, given the fact that Trump has been saying right after he was elected back in November last year, he did say the U.S. Navy does need South Korea's shipbuilding industry's help as well. And then, of course, there are some talking about the crypto names as well as the K-pop names that could benefit from all this. In the meantime, renewables are definitely struggling today. Solar and battery names are bottom performance for the reasons, as you can imagine, that Trump actually ending the EV mandate and also pulling the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. We've got negative action across the board. Street Science is coming right back after this short